What is money? What the Fed creates are bank reserves. And I know it goes back, it's understandable why people would get this wrong because we're told bank reserves, the Fed, it's printing money. Bank reserves are base money, some people say. Is that actually true? You have to actually stop and think about what is it the Federal Reserve does? What is the role these bank reserves have, if any, in the actual monetary system? And it goes back to expectations. Without thinking anything about it, the Fed expands its balance sheet by buying assets, creating these bank reserves as an offset. And if you don't think any more about it, you think, well, the Fed printed money. I better act as if inflation's coming because the Fed just printed a bunch of money. That's what the Fed is actually counting on. They're counting on people looking at their balance sheet and only their balance sheet, not thinking about what bank reserves actually do and acting as if that is money printing. That's expectations-based policy. But when you actually stop and look at what quantitative easing is, first of all, it's not really quantitative if you got to do it more than once. And is it actually easing? From the perspective of the commercial banking system, bank reserves are not money. It's nothing more than another asset that's created that banks actually hold. And what quantitative easing actually amounts to the commercial banking system is an asset swap. So it isn't actually money printing, and it can't be money printing. Because think about it this way. Have you or I ever been able to use a bank reserve and go to the grocery store or the gasoline station and buy goods or service with it? You can't. A bank reserve is nothing more than an interbank token. And it's only one form of interbank token alongside many other forms of interbank settlement tokens that the private system, the private Eurodollar system, had used and invented for decades before that. So we have to stop and think about what the Federal Reserve actually does in terms of bank reserves as well as quantitative easing. What do all these transactions do? And if quantitative easing isn't actually money printing, and spoiler alert, it's not, then quantitative tightening isn't actually monetary tightening. It's nothing more than expectations-based policy to get people to act in a specific way that policymakers have designed. So it makes sense why the Fed would raise rates and do quantitative tightening, because if everybody believes that that's what's actually happening, then they're going to act as if the Fed is tightening. But see, that's not actually how it works. And it's not actually an effective form of policy, which is why in 2022, 15 years after the first financial crisis, we're still dealing with the aftermath of the first financial crisis, because QE, creation of bank reserves, didn't actually solve the original problem, which is the other quote that you picked out. 2008 was not about housing mortgage. It wasn't about subprime mortgages. It was a global dollar shortage. And the worst part about it wasn't a temporary one-off. It represented a paradigm shift in this global Eurodollar system. We have a real money problem. We have a real breakdown in the bank balance sheet construction globally, and there's no way you can fix it with just sentiment. There have been pockets of where you can see some kind of relationship between the placebo effect and, say, for example, the stock market. The stock market loves the placebo effect. The stock market fund managers and people in the financial services industry love to say, the Fed is printing money, buy stocks. The Fed, Jay Powell's got your back. Don't worry about a thing. Just buy shares, buy, because we don't know if it's true or not. At least there's a sentimental and psychological reaction from the financial services industry in particular, buying stock with whatever the Federal Reserve is doing.